Hi, my name is Hector Del Castillo, and I am Chief Product Officer at Byond. I'd like to welcome all of you to today's discussion. Today's topic is successful acquisitions for cybersecurity companies. And our speaker today is Lori Wiggins, who is CEO at Byond. Lori, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's so good to be here.
All right. And I want to thank everyone who's joined us so far, and we're expecting a few more. So we're going to go over some housekeeping items before we get started. And I've shared these also via the chat so that you're clear as to what are some of the things that we're going to be covering today. But first off is we want to make sure that you are aware that you're in listen only mode, and make sure you have good audio quality. If you don't, if you experience any audio issues, you can actually refresh your browser, or you can drop out and rejoin using the same link that you used to join the session. And usually that will take care of any audio issues. Also, if you have any questions, feel free to type them in either using the chat or the Q&A portion. We'll be monitoring both, and we will have a Q&A portion where we'll be asking questions, and Lori may actually cover some of those as she goes into the program. But so if you type them in as early as possible, will be great, so we can actually try to fit them into the program itself. But we are going to have a Q&A portion, so be sure to type in your questions as early as possible, either using the chat or the Q&A section. Also, we're recording today's entire discussion, so we'll be sharing a link with everyone who signed up so that you can actually view the video playback after today's live session. And we also would like to encourage you to follow us on Twitter, also follow us on LinkedIn. Here are the handles that were used for our company. It's at Byond MA. Lori's Twitter is at Lori J. Wiggins, and mine is at HM Del Castillo. You can also follow us on our LinkedIn company page, and that is on this short URL, bit.ly/ByondMNA. And we'll be sharing this information also via the chat so that you don't have to write it down. And also, we want to give a special thanks and shout out to Scott Taylor, who does all the video editing and production. This is what allows us to quickly turn around the videos on the session so that we can share them with you for video playback after every live session we hold. So thanks to Scott. And also what I'd like to do is actually introduce at this point our speaker today, and that is Lori Wiggins, who is CEO at Byond. Lori, take it away.
Thank you, Hector. Welcome, everyone, to our webinar today. So who's this webinar for? It's for CEOs that want to acquire successfully, CEOs with a growth mindset, and those that want to build an enduring business. In this presentation, you'll learn how to acquire successfully and the steps that you can take today to start to make it happen. Does this sound like you? You worked hard for years to grow your business, but you still wanted to grow faster. You want to outpace your competition. You need to increase the resilience of your business. And you want to position your company to outdo other companies. There is nothing for sale today. Our goal today solely is to provide value. And if you stick around until the end, we have a very useful gift for you. Who are we? First, I have over 30 years of experience both working in and with technology and software businesses. I have been helping businesses grow their revenue since 2010. I really enjoy watching CEOs succeed, both scaling their businesses, selling, and buying businesses. I went to Virginia Tech, go Hokies, and I enjoy singing and traveling with my husband and family. And Hector, who's our Chief Product Officer, also has a long and illustrious history in technology businesses and working with them. He very much enjoys helping CEOs grow their technology and software businesses. He's a proud UC Santa Barbara and UT El Paso graduate, and he's a running man. He enjoys running, walking, and soccer. Let's look at the cybersecurity market. First, in 2019, last year, the market was $167 billion. And it's going to continue to grow fast at a 10.4% CAGR, or compound annual growth rate, through 2023 and beyond. So as you can see here, the cybersecurity market has had a steady growth throughout, and it's projected to be worth over 248 billion in 2023, and this is the global market. So this is the global cybersecurity market as far as market spend. Where are people spending their money? So the light blue here for each of these bars is spending on external threats versus the dark blue, which is internal threats. So the takeaway here is that even as the market spend increases year after year after year, a greater proportion over the years of that increased market spend is being directed to combat external threats, that is, external company threats. So due to COVID, there is a new security perimeter. You have many more devices that are being used at home because people are working at home, and thus you have many more vulnerabilities. An increasing trend in cybersecurity is the use of AI to anticipate and neutralize threats. So Capgemini did a study of the use cases, the AI use cases, and lo and behold, the top 3 use cases have to do with network, data, and endpoint security, which are all about those external threats that we were just talking about. No surprise. So, how do we acquire successfully? Acquisitions fall in 2 major buckets. There are the scale deals, and scale deals are performed by companies that are earlier in their life cycle. They're still trying to scale, and scaling versus growth is where a company is growing, your revenues and your expenses grow at about the same rate. Whereas with companies that want to scale, their revenues grow much faster than their expenses, 10 or 20 times faster. And scale deals involve increasing your market share. You may buy your competitor, you may buy your supplier, or even your customer. You are also likely to purchase a company perhaps in a new geographic sector. Again, it's all about increasing your market share. You might want to expand your R&D, but the idea is that you are really putting a jet in your company growth. Whereas scope deals are usually performed by companies that are larger and better established. They're already established in their current market, but they want to diversify into new markets, new capabilities. They're interested in providing new services and products to their customers in order to keep increasing their value proposition to their customers. So let's look at successful acquisition. There are 3 major areas that we want to discuss today. One is preparing to buy. Before you ever approach any company to buy them, what do you need to do to prepare internally? And how you work with sellers, as well as 2 large areas of M&A, very important areas, and that is due diligence and integration. Getting an A in all of these areas enables you to maximize the value of that acquisition to your company. So let's look at this in more detail. First, Why are you acquiring? We've just discussed some reasons to do that, but what's the actual value add for your company? And this is a great opportunity for you to discuss this with your major advisors, your executive team, and your shareholders to get ideas to generate perspectives. As well, you need to have internal agreement about why you're buying and why now is a great time to do that. Otherwise, you're going to experience problems down the line. Also, the more clearly and specifically you can characterize your targets, the more likely you are to be successful. In other words, the more likely you are to realize your value proposition. It's important that you have an experienced team helping you with the acquisition. Successful M&A is all about a team because there's a number of different skills that are required to be successful. You need your specialists, including lawyers and accountants, but you also need someone who is taking the big picture. In other words, someone who can look across your company and make sure that the deal is moving forward and that all the things, the many tasks that are associated with an acquisition are being performed in a competent and timely way. Doing an acquisition is like taking on another full-time job. So folks like us can help you continue to run the company, and we'll run the acquisition with your direction and oversight. Also, how are you going to pay for this acquisition, and what's your budget for doing so? Many companies use a variety of funding sources, including company cash, company stock or equity, and debt. If you are working with a banker or financier to obtain debt, it's wise to get a letter, something in writing that tells you how much they are making available to you. Also, savvy sellers will want to see this as part of proof that you can actually close the deal. Let's look at working with sellers. First of all, it's very important that you remain objective during the transaction and during the choosing of targets. Those criteria that I mentioned a moment ago about your targets, this is where this comes in very handy. Hopefully you started with a great many targets with the idea of narrowing them down to a handful, say 3 to 5 most promising targets. Those criteria help you do that in rapid order. We've seen where a CEO fell in love with the company, must have it, bought it, and then lived to regret it because it didn't fulfill their requirements. Excuse me. You should only approach target companies that meet your requirements. Once you've identified these companies and you approach them and they are willing to talk to you, you're going to want to put them under a confidentiality agreement. A CA is like an NDA, only with more rules. A primary one being that the target does not discuss their discussions with you with anyone else, typically for competitive reasons. So now you have 3 to 5 companies, no more, because it gets tough to manage. You're talking with them, and essentially this is the first round of negotiations. And as you are proceeding in these negotiations, typically one will stand out, one that you're really seriously going to consider buying. And you want to establish with them a letter of intent. The letter of intent helps you get agreement on major parts of the deal. So we're talking about the price, earnouts, identification of key employees, and any measures you take to make sure you retain them. Due diligence and the ground rules for that, especially now that site visits may not be possible. Your closing conditions, shareholder permissions, any warrants, exclusivity, your closing expenses, and other items. With a signed LOI in hand, you can feel comfortable about drafting a final agreement. Let's talk about due diligence and integration. So companies perform due diligence as a big risk reduction measure. You're finding out about this company and you need to delve in deep enough and broad enough to understand what you're really buying. Some companies do what we call the paper check, which is doing the legal and financial checks. Now, this is obviously necessary, but it is not, it's not enough. You want to look at other areas of the business, for example, cybersecurity, their operational processes, their management, their customers, their sales and marketing, and their customer service. And this gives you a broad and hopefully deep enough view of the company so that you can really understand what you're buying. And most importantly, you can identify any problems so that you can make decisions about whether you move forward with this deal or not. Also, performing sufficient due diligence gives you a very important window into the integration activities you're going to need to perform. Integration occurs in 4 major areas: people, systems, data, and processes. And the due diligence will help you understand, for example, what tools your target is running and which you're going to keep and which go by the wayside. Integration is an area which is typically underestimated by the buyer's management. And we're talking about in terms of money, time, and expertise needed to properly integrate the target. So understanding these ahead of time will help you close the business case for acquisition. PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, did a study of companies that acquire frequently, and those that start the integration planning process well in advance of closing have a 40% more likely, they are 40% more likely to be successful. Lastly, after the deal has closed and you are performing integration, it's important to keep these things in mind. You need to communicate clearly and frequently with the target management and employees. You need to let everybody know what their role is in the new company or the new arrangement so that there is not flight out the door. Also, you want to prioritize your integration activities. What are you going to do first, second, and third, based on the importance of that area to your company? Lastly, it's important to understand any cultural differences between your company and your target's company, and to take steps to meld them smoothly together. So here's how you can acquire successfully. Here's the hard way. Become a business acquisition expert yourself by reading books and attending expensive seminars and conferences and hiring expensive consultants. Or follow our methodology and framework to acquire successfully. But more about that in a minute. So here's what I promised you today. I said I would explain how to acquire successfully, which I have, and what to do today to make it happen. We suggest a 30-minute phone call with us to get clarity on 3 things. First of all, how much work it's going to take to get prepared to acquire successfully. your readiness to acquire, and then setting up a process to do so. Feel free to contact us through bit.ly/BeyondAPPT to set up an appointment. Hector is placing this URL in the chat window so you don't have to write it down. Further, we're likely to have a business acquisition workshop in the early winter, and please email us at solutions@beyondma.com if you are interested in finding out more. So at this point, I'm going to turn the program back over to Hector so that we can address any questions. Hector?
Thank you so much. And audience, reminder that you can type in questions and we can actually take them on the chat or the Q&A portion. And Lori, one of the questions, and you referred to this at the very beginning, that I think right now the future of cybersecurity is that people want to start automating many of the and take countermeasures by using artificial intelligence. Do you have any idea of who's leading in that scenario right now, as far as the type of platforms that already have AI engines incorporated onto those? I don't know if you have any examples or case studies about that,
Sure.
of what's going on.
Yes. So they're using artificial intelligence not only to thwart threats, but to anticipate them, as well as monitor their systems to see what types of threats are increasing through time. Many larger companies are already doing this. For example, Microsoft is using AI because they have to ward off trillions of threats every year. And this is increasing. And the number of companies that are providing this know-how is increasing also. And we also play in the artificial intelligence industry, and we are seeing rapid AI adoption across numerous industries, including cybersecurity.
Thank you so much. You also mentioned that right now there's an increase of people working remotely, and how that is actually increasing the vulnerabilities within organizations that have employees working in remote areas, remotely, but for the most part. Can you speak to some of the things that you've seen right now in the industry, as far as what's happening?
Sure. So as more people are working remotely, then they are increasingly vulnerable to network threats. More people are working on their own machines versus company machines, and they may not have the same level of cybersecurity protection. Also, if you're not at the workplace, sometimes you're not quite as careful about what you're opening, especially if it's from entities that are not known to you. So I think I see the threat increase in a number of areas, both tangible and on the part of employees. Sometimes maybe if you're working from home, psychologically, it's not quite the same.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. I don't see any other questions, but I do want to go over the information about a little bit more about us. So at Byond, we believe in making a positive impact within any organization. And we focus on companies that want to scale their growth. And we mostly help and work with technology and software companies, since that's our background for both Lori and myself. And we also help in either buying or selling, and preparing for either buying other companies or selling companies. And if you want to touch base, and let you know that you can contact us either via email or also connect with us via LinkedIn. And these URLs will lead you to our profiles on our LinkedIn. So you can feel free to connect with us. You can also visit our company website. So with that, I'd like to conclude this. I don't see any other questions, Lori. Do you have any closing statements?
First, I want to thank everyone for joining us today, and please stay well, stay safe, and we'll see you next time.
Yes, thanks so much, Lori, for a great talk, and thanks everyone for joining us. And feel free to reach out to us, and no obligation. We can talk to you with no obligation. So hopefully we'll be able to touch base with you. Thank you so much. Stay safe. Have a great week.